Jackie. Go ahead, Shakira.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Namaste, assalamu alaikum, good evening, good morning to all of you, depending on which time zone you are in, because there are always people in this meeting from all over the world. I am Shakira Mohammed of Trinidad and Tobago, a teacher for the past 14 years, and this is the 141st edition of our Zoom public meeting. We wish to sincerely thank all those who have contributed in whatever way to the success of this ongoing pan-Indo-Caribbean and pan-Indian diaspora global project. So for 140 unbroken continuous weeks, we have been here every single Sunday. In the past 2 years, 10 months, and 3 weeks, we have featured over 474 presenters from all parts of the world, speaking on 140 topics. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a weekly forum being hosted by the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center, a legally registered research and publishing company operating since 2010. In order to continue this weekly program and to make it bigger and better, we are asking that you kindly give us your suggestions as well as donations, and you can contact Dr. Kumar Mahabir for further details. Ladies and gentlemen, our moderator this evening or tonight is Shaloma Mohammed, the co-director of this Zoom platform, who is a business teacher and researcher from Trinidad and Tobago. She obtained her master's degree in business psychology from Franklin University in the USA. So Shalma, welcome. Please take over from here.
Thank you so much, Shakira. Assalamu alaikum to everyone. Namaste and a very warm welcome to you all. Thanks so much for choosing to join us today. Our public meeting today will take the usual form of a panel presentation followed by questions and answers. In order to avoid trolls from invading the program, our IT manager, Robin Ramsing, has muted everyone. Speakers, you are advised to not admit anyone. Please do not unmute anyone, and we would appreciate it if you would not allow anyone to share your screens. Thank you. This virtual event should not exceed 2 hours. And today we are talking about portrayals of Indo-Trinidadians in Calypso songs. Now, Calypsos at this point in time are all over the place. This is music that is associated with Carnival, and in Trinidad and Tobago, Carnival will be held next week, Monday and Tuesday. However, this entire month has been engaged with Carnival activities. So we just want to put some context to this topic. In his essay entitled The Psychology of Racial Conflict with a Calypso Beat, which was published in 1992, Professor Ramesh Deosaran asserted that in a psychological sense, the Calypso, like humor itself, must be seen as a method of human communication, which targets certain groups, which affects and seeks to rearrange social relationships, which stirs emotions, which can add or divide, which can cause shame or pride privately or publicly. He went on to emphasize that the Calypso, for all psychological purposes, is a serious method of mass communication and helps to shape beliefs about self and others. Professor Deosaran's assertions lead us to query: 1. To what extent are Indo-Trinidadians shamed in Calypsos? 2. Are Indo-Trinis targeted in Calypsos because of their cultural, political, and socioeconomic differences? 3. What is the belief system that is shaped by Calypsos about Indo-Trinidadians? And lastly, have the lyrics of Calypsos influenced the Indo-Trinidadian belief about self? Ladies and gentlemen, before we hear from our distinguished panel of speakers, let us hear an early Calypso from one of its pioneers and stalwarts, that is the mighty Sparrow, the proverbial king of Calypso. And this one is entitled Marajin. Robin, please bring that up.
the border. I live from California to Tijuana. There I met Margarita. A true Mexican beauty. She, of my happiness, you're the one that I have always dreamed of. You got everything I need, everything I want. How can I exist without your sweet love? When I see you in your sari or your burning, I am captured by your innovative beauty. If it wasn't for your nanny and your bounty, I will marry you and take you in the country. Yo, Maraji, Maraji. Sexy Marajin, pretty Marajin, sexy Marajin around. Do la hin, what do you hear? Get it sweet music playing. I wanna hold you, I wanna rock you, I wanna jam you, jam you, jam you, jam you. Fire! Da 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 da. Woo! 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 Trees, flickering in the breeze, in a land of love and golden sunshine. As the grass is green, so you are a queen, and I'm longing so much to make you mine. I will walk the land and give you all the advice. I will even drink you juta from the lota, if you only whisper to me how to beat. The rhythm of the tasha we gon' show. Yo! Ay, ay, ay. Oh, my sweet, do like it. Sexy Marajin, sexy Marajin, sexy Marajin, all right. Do like it. Oh, do like it. Hear this sweet music playing. I wanna hold you, I wanna rock you, I wanna jump, 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 jump. Hey, hey.
Rollins, the crow.
So there we have Marajin, Sparrow's rendition, singing there about his obsession with this sexy Indian woman. So that Calypso was rendered in 1989, 34 years ago. Let's bring on our first speaker, who I'm sure will have a comment about this, and he is none other than Senator Anna Roberts. He calls himself the Dogla. He is a former member of parliament in Trinidad and Tobago and a former minister of sport and youth affairs. He's now an opposition senator in the parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, representing the United National Congress. He is also a swimming coach. Welcome, sir. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, and Assalamu alaikum, namaste. Good afternoon, and what a nice way to start. I nearly forgot about that brilliant, beautiful Calypso by Sparrow. Now, as you said, being a Dogla, you can see above my shoulder is my mother, my beautiful mother. May God rest her soul. She passed away in 2008, but she is of East Indian descent, straight from Malaysia. And everybody who knows her in Trinidad would know that she wore saris every day. She had 3 cupboards of saris. One cupboard was all black because she was an attorney, and she would wear her sari to court. She had normal saris that she'd wear to the grocery, wherever, taking her swimming or to football, to school. And then she had her special saris for occasions that required dressing up. So what was very interesting, and this topic really hits me to the heart, because in the vein of racism or racist thought or racist socialization, I was at a deficit, living in a household with a Tobagonian African father and an East Indian sari-wearing mother, and moving around normally, we did not really get or see any distinction between race, ethnicity, religion, and so on. So I had to develop and understand and study it when I encountered it as I got older. One of the things that I learned when I got older was how strong a woman my mother really was, because I would realize that once every year or every other year, we would go to New York, and then we would see her sister and her brother, who was a priest. Now, she came from Malaysia, and she was Catholic. In Malaysia, there are Chinese Malaysians, Indian Malaysians, Hindu, Muslim, and Catholics. So she came from a sort of wealthy family, Catholic, and she went to England to study law. She met my father, who went from Tobago to study law after leaving QRC. And they fell in love, and they were married there at school. Now, I only learned this in hindsight, that my mother's parents were so upset with her being back in the days that would have been the 60s, the early 60s, 1966, 65, that her father especially discommunicated her. They just could not accept that she found a Black African man to fall in love with. So we would go to New York on a rendezvous. We thought it was just holiday, but that's where I would meet my cousins, my auntie, and so on. I had never seen and never laid eyes on my grandfather nor grandmother. And this was the strength of my mother. She left and came, she headed west instead of going back east to Malaysia, to Trinidad and Tobago, a country that she'd never set foot on. And she laid her bucket here. So when you talk about it, Calypso back in those days, even up to 89, where Sparrow sang that beautiful song, if you go back to Attila the Hun and Zandoli, remember Calypso, there are very many sectors of Calypso. The one that has turned as a weapon is the social commentary part, the comedian part, the comedic part, the extempo, still entertains and does not attack anyone. But the social commentary has gone awry. And in my unscientific analysis, just from being a Calypso lover and being born into the People's National Movement, you would never believe that, but I was born there. My father was actually the chairman of the CDC back then, which is now the NCC, and was in charge of Calypso. So we used to go to all the Calypso tents, the Calypso Savannah, the March Gras, down in Skinner Park. So Calypso was a big part of our lives. And when you analyze Calypso back in the days, you would see that it was fair, it was justified. It was like a newspaper. You would get both sides of the coin. You would get fairness. You would get people called out. You will see that even in Marajin, there is some truth that East Indian families back in the day did not want their daughters to mix and so on. And that's fair comment, and that's actual society. And we move on from there, and we learn from how we were, and we accept. And you know that when you don't know about someone, you fear them. But when you get into the realm of racism, and this is what we are here to talk about today, around, and I am saying I have put a benchmark of it on December 1986, Calypso social commentary took a turn for the worse. Why do I say that? Previously, the PNM had been unfettered in power in Trinidad and Tobago, meaning the African government had been there since 1956. Dr. Williams, in his Massa Day speech in 1961 before the elections, when a white Portuguese Trinbagonian joined with the opposition, he told the African people that you must fight and defend, and he created the PNM to be their home for political power, and he created the racial divide in politics in Trinidad and Tobago. Previously, Trinidad and Tobago had moved forward when Africans and Indians united. In 1922, when we actually got some political power, it was because the East Indian Association and the African National Congress got together and forced the colonials to give us some sort of say in our domestic affairs. In 1986, Bastille Pandey and the ULF joined with A&R Robinson and Carl Hudson Phillips and formed the NAR. This was an amalgamation of Indian and Africans. And this also happened in 1995. Bastille Pandey with his UNC and the NAR's 2 Tobago seats brought Indians and Africans together. And it could be debated. I am biased because I am a UNC, but that period saw some of the greatest moves towards diversification, implementation, performance beats old talk. Now, unfortunately, they only lasted 6 years because another problem with our East Indian community is that we always break up and fight, but we were taught that in politics. And then again in 2010, under Kamla Persad-Bissessar, all the parties came together with the Congress of the People, Tobago with the TOP, the Labour with the MSJ and NJAC. And Trinidad and Tobago saw movements forward like never before. You also see that when these governments of unity come in, that the crime situation and social fabric, unity and love and togetherness and family and feelings of positivity and patriotism are enhanced. Now, why do I say December 1986? Calypso before that had been fair. No one, of course, you will always, once you have human beings, you will have racial lyrics, insensitivity, condemnation, and so on. And but it was in a fair, balanced manner that was not used as a missile of attack to denigrate and disrespect a group. But what happened? The PNM lost government. They had never before seen this or thought about it. The PNM was a staple. So Dr. Williams would say, let the jackass bray. And he would turn off his hearing aid, go in the tent and listen to Calypsos. But the PNM was in power. Now they came out of power. And when you see that now, you now see in 1987, 88, the rise of the social commentary to attack Indians. And there you came with Crow Crow, the most racist Calypsonian, possibly the most racist individual on the Trinidad and Tobago. Now, for me to call someone a racist, I have to have a lot of evidence, because to claim that someone is a racist, you have to eliminate all other possibilities, all other facts, all other opportunities to discern their creative thought or their lyrics. And I state categorically that Crow Crow is a racist, and he came forward and became the monarch, the Calypso king in a country that is multi-ethnic and, most importantly, divided evenly, 38% and 38% between Afro and Indos. But Crow Crow came up. And why did he come up? Because the PNM now knew that they had to use all their tools to regain power and to maintain power. And Calypso was that tune, was that tool. I listened to Dr. Mohammed's talk about Dio Saran's thesis, this piece that he wrote, and he was correct. Calypso is powerful. It can engender a grouping. It can attack. It could change the pathways of mental, of thought, of cognitive processes and mind share. And Calypso then became an attack, first politically. However, once you go into politics in Trinidad and Tobago, the opposition, the biggest block of the opposition is East Indians of different religion, mainly Hindu, but Muslim and Christian also. But that is what took place. The PNM now needed a weapon, and they weaponized Calypso. And in 1988, you see Crow Crow becoming the monarch. And we will play, I believe, Ravin, one of his songs from that year. Well, we'll play that. That was he sang. We'll play that last. That's Corruption in Common Entrance, right? Some people say it was such a brilliant calypso. It's the most inane, unsubstantiated, non-factual calypso ever sung. But let us start with something in 1996. About 10 years later, they look for that. Let's listen to verses 1, 3, and 4.
Black man cry. No blood still running from black people's eye. But I remember when a sunrise, African rise. And I beg black man, please open your eyes. While I was singing and busting me liver string, black man asking me where Atlantic play. Then they put their 14 finger on the shelf. So today, black man, you must blame yourself. Cause when I sing, they never listen where Coco say. Black man's mentality gone Spectrum and PSA. Big lyrics I sing in, they wouldn't listen to me. Black man telling black man, oh black man, come out to party. I remember when I sing Sham, we don't want it. They say black brothers say Coco, you singing shit. So they say through my fault while you strike your heart. Black man, all you look for that. I wonder why black man always want that kickstart. Black man, all you look for that. Black man, how on earth you could condone this? Your daughter might have to work in this man's office. Then imagine this sexy silver-headed pest. 12 fingers under your daughter's dress. Me ain't saying that Patrick should have win, sir, but even Jim Baker would have been better. All the women who went beaching the other day about this Mr. Way, all you have to say concerning this thing, all you're silent and talking peace. So the office girls must be at the mercy of this beast. He was charged, so whether it is false or true, I'm concerned because I have a daughter too. I'm talking from my heart, I'm telling you. Black man, all you look for that. Why on earth black man always want that kickstart? Black man, all you look for that. All you get stew. Who would have believed both of them with a side with Panday and give away Tobago's best holiday? Them two go and sit down on the wrong table and then look for the best for the old Tobago people. But all you cannot quarrel, all you cannot fret. That's where you ask for, that's the way you get. We still love Nelson and Calypso Rose. The world know we honestly recognize those. Dwight Young, a great footballer with Aston Villa. We always show love and respect to that fella. But all you smile when Robbie married to Pandey. I hope all you understand where Satmarat say. If he thought I marry a black man, he drop ship. Black Tobago, all you look for that. Mighty Masquerades done and Ricky Jai start. Tobago, all you look for that.
Now, when you listen to this calypso, you would believe that economic policies, education policies, sport, opportunity, foreign direct investment, the energy sector, and so on, was irrelevant because all Crow is singing there, and he had been singing it since his crown in 1988 from a bully pulpit, was all he was saying was, you join with an Indian. Therefore, pressure, no factual basis, because time also told from 96 to 99 into 2000 that crime went down to the lowest levels in Trinidad and Tobago. But up to now, murders were down to 69. Last year was 614. In this year alone, we've reached 79 murders. That was the total under Pandey in 1999. So Crow said and sang in the savannah and turned Calypso into, it was a sin for black people to join with Indian people, not showing any history of the success of Trinidad and Tobago, which was always intrinsically linked to the unity of the East Indian and African struggle coming together, taking strides forward. Some of it also in there was so racist and attacking Pandey, even though he was freed. He even said in the song, I don't care if it's true or false. They charge him. Now you must know that the police in Trinidad and Tobago are about 86% African and had been controlled and are now even controlled worse right now because we've gone back about 40 years by the PNM. Many of them even jump out to go into politics after they retire from the police service. You would see that Basdio Pandey was charged for an account that he didn't declare in his integrity form. But we have a prime minister now who have failed to declare many things on his form, but we don't see him getting charged as yet. So Crow just took it to the stage that it was wrong for African and Indians to join, and it was anybody, any African who joined with an Indian is a traitor and a black hater, a self-hater. He then went on, as we go to the next song, which is Compare and Contrast. I think I even got into that one. I think I was lucky to be mentioned in that song too. But this was in 2010, after Trinidad and Tobago had gone through in 2004 to 2007, one of the biggest booms. Oil price went up to $140 a barrel, yet the poverty rate increased from 12% to 16.7%. And school education was diminishing. Yes, they started to increase a little funding to GATE from the dollar to dollar for Pandey, but the country was in a complete mess despite the largesse. And then there becomes Kamla Prasad Desessa with an amalgam of Afro and Indians coming together, whitewashing the PNM. And here comes Crow 8 months later. Ravin, run it.
I compare and contrast, and let me tell you fast. And in my conclusion, I see some black men as Jack. But since the days of slavery, black man heart is hard like stone. Cause it's black man who make black man groan. Cause black man never like he own. That's why since last election, Crow grieving. Look at how all you treat Patrick Manning. The way all you cuss him, run him and tell him go. I never see the Indian street bars they Pandey so. When Pandey deep and McNichol switch from the tail, Indians went and make candlelight preaching by the jail. So on behalf of a few good niggas that I know, well, you should never ever treat Mr. Manning so. Shame on you, Dagger, Errol McLeod, Anil Rum, Cork and Obika. The way all you destroy the black brother, you are for prostitutes of black power. Look at how all you get weak. McLeod I now choking him, he could hardly speak. I'm so disappointed in you, black man. All you said that late bottom African. All you have shame. Give back the African man his name. You get a big white police commissioner. Where are the advocates of black power? Massive cosign here, Alaran Patap and Ricky Jai. They never see them put tears in Bastel Pandey to the first to Oscar B and Crazy. You must understand, all of them is late bottom African. All you sell we out. Look at all you have black people suffer it all about. I'm waiting for all you for emancipation. Hypocrite, weak, lying, late bottom African. Chalky did vex with Valley, but Chalky should apologize publicly. Cause this hypocrite dashiki look. Valley was right to call all you mook. Cause no woman who wears an Orini voted against the UNC. But Hazel Brown, which she had wrap up on the current platform voting for cup. How come Chalky never ever sing about this? No songs about this superior abortionists. But he make Eric Williams Chambers and Patrick grieve. Any black government pound them till they leave. For 20 years Patrick was the boss in the land. He lost and went back to his humble home in Copoland. But in 6 months, Kamla show you one Mako Bongolo. Well, you should never ever treat Mr. Manning so. Shame on Hazel Brown. Look how you have black woman head dragging on the ground. If Rosa Parks was alive here, where she'd do? Can you in the back at the bus and start to pinch you? So, On you brown I frown, give back the African, the head wrap and gum. I'm so disappointed in you, woman. Another late bottom African. All your hair has shame. On this note, I must call Bona Centro's name. S class, all you ain't got. Remember, Jesus Christ talked about harlots and sluts. Take example from the Indian people. They still have Bastille Pandey on a paper cut. So Cleveland Raphael, Andy Johnson, and sprung along. All of them is late bottom African. All you sell we out. Look how all you have people crying all over South. I waited for all you for emancipation. Hypocrite, lying, late bottom African.
Well, there you have it. It's the most illogical, factless Calypso in history. He is also trying to compare there the civil rights movement in the USA with Anglo-Saxon white people who abuse African and Indians and all people black and brown. He is bringing Rosa Parks into an issue with black and brown people on an island, which is totally irrelevant. He spoke there about the Black Power movement, failing to realize that the Black Power movement was against the Black PNM. It was against Dr. Williams, that Dr. Eric Williams had banished Stokely Carmichael from Trinidad and Tobago, who later became Kwame Ture. It was the Indian Prime Minister Bastille Pandey who lifted the ban and allowed Stokely Carmichael to return to Trinidad and Tobago. But again, what a premise, that once you join with India, regardless of how successful the government was, regardless that gate enrollment, university enrollment moved from 18,000 to 58,000, and expenditure on tertiary education moved from 300 million to 726 million, 106 schools, laptops for all. Forget all of that. But why would you treat an Indian with respect? Why would you join with Indians? It was so racist. I know I'm going over a little time, so Raven, play the common entrance for me. This was the one that brought Crow to the fore and ensured that Calypso will be dead as it is now, because the tents are dead, because East Indians don't buy tickets anymore, because they will not buy tickets to go and sit down and be attacked and abused by people on a bully pulpit with a microphone. We'll bring in the biggest racist Calypsonian in history, Crow with common entrance.
Trying to protect my child, but corruption is a constant annoyance. Going on too long in common entrance. You don't have to be intelligent, that is a lie. Your father must pull a good string with complexion high. Your child could be bright like a bulb and from Laventille. Forget holy names, convent and bishops and steel, because they have to be La and they Buddha, Krishna Maharaj, because Arjun and Saj father big garage. Chaiti Bisuni Moli and Pomani, the brother, sister, son and Narwani, Hadid Montano, Satan, Abraham. They pick so much big shot children that get sham. When they fool them big just go right up to the net. They send all them poor to the junior sect. To the high class, in the class, la 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 la.
Raven, you can come back. Now, if you listen to that, the man is confused. Number one, it was the PNM in charge. Number two, East Indians who came to Trinidad and Tobago were functionally illiterate and never got political control. It was people like Sat Maharaj and the Asja who took and built schools that the PNM ridiculed and called cowsheds. And the parents of East Indian children sacrificed and ensured that they didn't play sport, they didn't dance, they didn't nothing, study a book. And therefore, the children of cane cutters became surgeons and lawyers, professors, doctors, and that's what they did. But this Mr. Man came here to call Indian names when it was done on merit. East Indians moved up the list on common entrance based on hard work, sacrifice of parents, so much so that when I was on the radio, I've been following this for about 20 years. Up to the top 200, the basic results will be 170 Indian names. It's not totally scientific, but they would print the 200 and I would go through it. 160 to 170 will be East Indian names. About 15 to 18 will be African names, and the rest will be mixed up. That has been the norm. Now we see in Trinidad and Tobago that they are hiding the results. A child has to go to FOIA and go to court to find out who came first. The other point in this Calypso, he's putting East Indians with Syrians and Chinese and the Trinidad whites, who were uplifted, upheld, and made profits under the PNM. And if that, there is some ring of truth to that, because I went to Fatima College, and some fellas who came 39th and 40th out of 40 were of those sort of families. So there is truth, but it was the PNM that was doing that, not the Indians. The Indians did not have political power. They did not control the Ministry of Education. East Indians worked hard, and their education now, when you see lawyers graduate out of 100, 80 will be Indian. If you see doctors out of 50, 35 to 40 will be Indian. So you have to be able to just speak the truth and understand and respect when people put effort and they've done well. That's what you should mimic, not come on a stage, concoct and bring nonsense to the fore and spew racist words on a stage and get applauded and funded and jobs from the PNM government because you turned Calypso into a weapon against East Indians with songs like Kidnap Them. You could go on and on. Even in the latest rendition now, Krokro is going to lose a lot of money to Inchan Ishmael, and I have no brief for Inchan Ishmael. He bad talk me all the time. I find him to be a bit of a loose cannon, but that's all right. But in this case, when Inchan Ishmael spoke out about a young man, Kareem Marcel, that they put up on the front page, I didn't know the gentleman, that he had gotten into law school, but he himself was on Power 102 and admitted that while he was in Trinity, he got 2s and 3s. You can't get into law school with 2s and 3s. So the PNM found a way to get this boy into law school, to have him graduate and then celebrate him. And Krokro comes to say that Inchan Ishmael calling that out is racist because the boy bright. There's one problem. The boy was not bright. He did not qualify. Many other children did not get into law school who had better results. Furthermore, he told him and he accused him of having stolen parts in bamboo, just assuming that Indian businessmen are corrupt. That is why Rohan Sinnan, the Indian Prime Minister, and some of those rich Indians were of the PNM ilk. And Rohan Sinnan, a PNM Minister of Works and Transport, describes them in the PNM, the East Indians, as the only honest Indians. Calypso is dead. Soca is moving and booming because when you go and listen to soca, no group is targeted. It's about family, community, culture, Calypso in the vein of Ras Shorty I. And when you look at those parties and fests, go and check. It's 50% Indian paying their money to go and celebrate Carnival. Playing mass, East Indians take part as much, if not more, than Africans in Trinidad and Tobago. But the tents are dead because of racism, especially pushed by Krokro and others. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I just sent you another note. Please close now, but thank you very, very much. We really appreciate you having shared personal details with us about your family and when you started. And your presentation was extremely insightful, quite analytical. We really, really appreciate it. So I'll ask you to please stay with us until all the presentations are done, because there will be some questions for you. And I'll invite you now to look at the chat. Some people have already posed questions. Thank you. And to members of the audience, if you do have other questions at this point in time for Senator Roberts, I will invite you to please put it in the chat so that he can prepare and give you answers very quickly at the end of all the presentations. So I want to move on now to our second speaker, and this is Professor Johnny Kumansingh. He's a geography professor focusing on cultural geography and rural economic development, as well as tourism and festivals. He's the author of 6 books and the publisher of a literary magazine. Welcome, Professor Kumansingh. Please unmute. Okay, unmute one more time. We can hear you now.
Okay, thank you very much for this privilege. Are you seeing me properly?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay, good. So I am not on video. I am not seeing anything like myself, so I don't have to see myself, right?
No.
Right. Well, I want to thank Senator Anil Roberts for that real spicy and fiery presentation. And as Anil, I am almost similar because I am not really, I have an Indian name, but I'm not really totally Indian because my great-grandfather came from Guyana. He is German Chinese. My great-grandmother came from, I believe it was Martinique. She was French, African, Carib. My grandfather on my mother's side came from Italy. Well, he has Italian roots. My father originally came from Grenada. His grandfather came from Goa, India. And so I am a hodgepodge, what I call a Milau, or whatever you want to call it. I am a Trinidadian. I was born in Sangre Grande, and I grew up in Sangre Grande. I went to school with a very plural situation in terms of the human genome. I eventually became a geographer. And I said to myself, why geography? Because I said geography completes the circle of all what I studied before. Geography became meaningful to me so that I could understand the world in which I live. But my research area is actually the Caribbean region with emphasis on Trinidad and Tobago. So I've written some books about Trinidad and Tobago and all that. And the Trinidad Carnival is one, and Christmas and Parang, and I published quite a few journal articles and book chapters so that we could really demonstrate what Trinidad is, Trinidad and Tobago, what we are. Well, one of the articles that I published, excuse me a little bit. I'm not so well today.
Professor Kumansingh, can you manage?
Yeah, I'll finish. Just a minute.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we can probably refer to the slide meanwhile.
Okay, one of the articles I published in a journal, Third World Societies in Practice. I published the article, The Calypso Art Form as a Weapon Against Afro-Indo unity in Trinidad and Tobago. And I did this because I was hearing some lyrics in different places, and a friend sent me a Calypso that was sung by Dr. Hollis Liverpool, who is the mighty chalk dust. And I became very, very interested, partially annoyed, partially angry at what he was saying. But I want to make these little caveats before I go along. I am speaking as a geographer, a cultural geographer who will observe the landscape, where things are, why they are there, and how they affect our lives and the lives of others. So I base my thing on culture. And I have realized over my research and studies that no culture is inherently better than another. So bashing one culture doesn't make sense. Another culture bashing the other doesn't make sense. Because inside of me are so many genes of different places. So if it's so, then all those genes will be fighting against one another. Maybe that's why my hair stands up straight sometimes. According to Zelensky, Wilbur Zelensky, who I met personally, one of the world's greatest cultural geographers, he said people carry their cultural baggage anywhere they go. What baggage do we have to carry? A racist ideology? Is it a discriminatory ideology against another person? Another Trinidadian or Tobagonian? According to V.S. Naipaul, we're coming to the Calypso thing. It is only in the Calypso that the Trinidadian touches reality. So it is so important to remember the communication, the vignettes of communication in certain angles about the Calypso, because people take it and they manipulate it and they macerate it and do all kinds of things with it to form an opinion. The Calypso is purely a local form. No song composed outside of Trinidad is a Calypso. But that's not anymore, because we have Calypsonians from Barbados, from Antigua, from St. Vincent, from St. Lucia, everywhere. So we cannot take that part of Naipaul's statement as totally valid. The Calypso deals with local incidents, local attitudes, and it does so in a local language. The pure Calypso, the best Calypso, is incomprehensible to the outsider. So what Senator Roberts was about Crow, I am wondering who really understands what he was saying, except Trinidadians. I guess the tourists who were there couldn't understand why your black man looked for that. Because I do not consider anybody in Trinidad and Tobago to be black. There's no black and white in Trinidad and Tobago. We were put here by some dint of nature on this outcropping of rock to survive, to live, to thrive, not to hate one another. So Crow was wrong in stating that. Very, very wrong. And I don't care what they say, what I say here today, but he was wrong. In terms of the people of Trinidad and Tobago, the statement, all are we is one, is a big lie. Not when you consider what unity is about. Many Calypsonians in their lyrics still lash out derogatorily at Indo-Trinidadians or Indians. Now, The next slide will be coming up in Lord Baker's Calypso, God Bless Our Nation. There's total misconception, misinformation, and misdirection. So we can play that and you will listen about what Trinidad is.
We like a drop of rain in an ocean, like a drop in the sea. But many, many nations still got to learn from we, how we aspire and we achieve. It's so hard to believe the unity that is so unique. It's fantastic, yes, so to speak. It's fantastic, yes, it is, the way how we live as one. In integration, all the nation is second to none. Here the Negroes, the white man, the Chinese, the Indian, we walk together in hand. In this wonderland of Calypso, in this wonderland of steel band. God bless our nation. We may never invent a bomb, or on the moon ever land a man. Our population, Trinidadians have set the pace, and through every color, creed and race in this world could find an equal place. So you see, it's fantastic, yes it is, the way how we live as one. In integration, all the nation is second to none. White man, the Chinese, their children, they play together in the sun. In this wonderland of Calypso, in this wonderland of steel band. Where I was born, God bless our nation. All I can say is I am so proud, and I'm going to sing it out, clear and loud. Yes, I'm proud of my people, each and every one of you, for contributing to humanity, and contented beings we always will be. Whenever the stories are said, how Trinidadian live, what the world thought was dead. So you see, it's fantastic, yes it is, the way how we live as one. In integration, all the nation is second to none. Here the Negroes, the white man, the Chinese, the Indian, we jump together in a band. In this wonderland of steel band, where I was born. God bless our
nation. Okay, so we listen to Lord Baker and we wonder, well, what's really going on here? He said, it's fantastic how we live, the way how we live as one. Do we live as one here? When you go to a Calypso tent, and I mean, one guy said, after Errol Peru was talking to me, he said, one guy said, well, he would used to buy 100 tickets and share to his friends to go to the Calypso tent. He used to bring his little whiskey and thing and share it with the Calypsonians and all that. Okay, but then they realized, well, they're being ridiculed. And why sit there, take your hard-earned money, pay for tickets to come and be ridiculed by Calypsonians? So Calypsonians, according to Peru, are their own worst enemies. Now, one Calypsonian recently was singing about, I think it was Crocro, was singing about how Indian people are making sahina and doubles and whatever it is to get rich because black people buying it. But Deepak Chopra said long time ago, he said, turn your problems into opportunities. There were days when I was at high school in Northeastern College, I used to see Indian children eating something from out of a bag and the bag would be over their mouth because something they were hiding. And I discovered they were eating roti and whatever the filling was in the roti. And you know, I said one, and just recently I gave a little lecture in the school, my alma mater. I wondered why. One child jumped up and said, because they were ashamed. Why should they be ashamed? Because people were harassing them and bullying them about what they eat. So I would like to skip this slide and go down to, I think is the one with, not this one. Right. This one with chalk dust. Naipaul to shame. Chalk dust used the same conversational trick to use an Indian name to bash Indians. So although Naipaul is the only Trinidadian Nobel Prize laureate, chalk dust used him to bash Indians. Because you will hear this Calypso and you'll wonder, should they really play this on the air? But there he was in the marsh gras singing for the crown. So let's hear this song.
Mr. Chairman, I thank thee for this grand Nobel Prize. I am serving dear Naipaul and I think you chose wise. Though my parents gave me a southern dull ancestry, I am proud of my English aristocracy. But them all East Indians in Trinidad and Tobago, they want me big up St. James and San Fernando. They vex with my Cockney accent and my Englishness, since I turned me back on these areas of darkness. You think I want the world to know that I'm from Trinidad, where Ali Baba and his gang working in my backyard. You think I want the world take me for thieves in Petrotrin? Them men, they're so bold-faced, they're thief in wind. You think I want the world link me with them airport contracts, where all them contractors and them get nice juicy kickbacks? So before you embarrass me, leave me as I am, Lord Vivian Naipaul, the Count of Birmingham. They lie. Mr. Chairman, I thank thee for this grand Nobel Prize. I am Vivian Naipaul from England, where my heart lies. Though I grew up on dal and rice, bacon and roti, I prefer baked beans, toast jelly, and English tea. We sit all, but them East Indians in Chaguanas, Touch Jordan, Cuba, they want me change my English suit and put on a capra. They want me trade my English loo and toilet paper for a latrine pit with a bottle of water. You think I want the world, say I friendly with Gopi Singh. Next thing, police searching my house for medicine and linen. I don't care if they say Naipaul hate Trinidad beef, but nobody could say Naipaul is a thief. You think I want them say that the 50,000 missing, I use it to stop Ramesh from selling out to Manning. So before you call me and Ramesh, Lima Karam, leave me as I am. He comes from Birmingham. Yeah, liar. Bye. Mr. Chairman, I thank thee for this grand Nobel Prize, but to associate me with them Trinidad guys, cause I don't rip off my people in big broad daylight, especially when their cars stop at a traffic light. And I don't want people say I resemble Dan Raj Singh, Tim Gopi Singh, Ganga Singh, and Carlos John Singh.
We have it there, and I couldn't understand when Chokdas was talking about who or what is thieving wind in Petrotrin. I worked in Petrotrin, and I saw everything, but it was a PNM minister who said, all are we thief. I'll leave that with you. I'll leave Chokdas with you to manipulate, macerate, mix up, and ask your questions later. Thank you.
Excellent, Professor Kuman Singh. Thank you so very much. That was, again, very insightful, very analytical, and we really do look forward to the questions for you at the end. Thanks again. Ladies and gentlemen, our third speaker is Mr. Ramnath Jagasa. He's a longtime advocate for Indian civil rights in Trinidad. In Canada, where he now lives, he was the secretary of the Indian Arrival and Heritage Month Committee, which later became South Asian Heritage Month, which is observed all over Canada. Welcome, Mr. Jagasa. You can go ahead and present.
Can we not play that rubbish Calypso by Kokro? I think we've had it already.
No, we won't.
And we have seen enough of this guy. I mean, what a piece of trash this man is. I don't need to emphasize. Anil has stolen some of my thunder and also the previous speaker. So I will take a different tack. I will come up in a little while to my presentation. Yes. Those who don't know will see that racist calypsos are not confined to Trinidad. About 5 years ago, we had a guy named Conductor right here in Toronto. We had an anniversary of Trinidad independence. I went to hear it. Everall, I think, was there. And the guy sang a calypso saying Trinidad has people of talent, right? Many people of talent. I said, that's good. And he named 9 black people. He named 9 Black people as Trinidad people of talent. I went up to him and said, something wrong with you, boy? You can't find one Indian with talent. You can't find one white man with talent. You can't find one Chinese person with talent. What about Vijay Naipaul? He had no talent. The prime minister at the time, the prime minister, Kamala, he leaves she out. I said, none of them have no talent. You know what he said? Not me and you, you know. You're racial. He told me I was racial because I pointing out his racism. And this is the thing that is common in Trinidad. And it's up here too, that something has happened. By the way, I smoked him good. I told everybody what a racist he was, right? And I informed the group, and on they stopped hiring him to play his Calypso. He started to beg. He sent me a libel letter saying that I am preventing him from making money and I should pay him money for libel. Can you believe this idiot, this clown? His name is Connector. And I told him to, I said, if you think you was man, sing that Calypso again in Canada. And I come in for you. Well, he hiding from, he can't sing that Calypso again, he's gone. But go back to my point, I'm going to make my piece short. I'm going to focus on this guy, Crow and 1988, because many things sprang from this, right? This was a kind of pivotal point. Things happened to Calypso, things happened to Indians, and in a sense, things happened to me as well, right? So his Calypso common entrance, Crow common entrance was rubbish, was tripe. It was openly racist, it was libelous. I had an Indian doctor named Krishna Maharaj. He was named in Calypso. He had a daughter in St. Augustine Girls High School. I tell him, why you have him to hang, man. Bring him up. The man was afraid because he had just escaped being kidnapped when he opened his gate. This Calypso was wrong on the facts as well. Crow knew perfectly well that the denominational board had signed a concordat with his PNM government stating that 20% of the entrance from common entrance would be chosen by the denominational board. Furthermore, that they couldn't pick any dog and cat from the road. You have to have passed the common entrance to get in the 20%. So who was putting in the other 80%? The education ministry, run by Black people, run by Africans. They were selecting 80%, right? The boards were only selecting 20%. I believe they were selecting teachers as well. And he took that to mean that they were corrupt, that we were paying the people in St. Augustine, Girls of Holy Name and all these other places and putting our children in there and keeping out Black people, keeping out Black children. They have to go into junior sex and the senior sex. And it wasn't only wrong, it was racist. But this song was very popular in the tent, right? Very, very popular in the tent. They acclaimed him, he won the Calypso crown and so on. And I decided that I ain't taking that so. I ain't taking that so. I formed a committee against racism in Calypso, and I put a good licking in his tail. For the first time in Trinidad, we saw widespread criticism of a Calypsonian, right? People all over the place started criticizing him, and he didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to do. Imagine he held his concert, the Calypso King held his concert that year, 1988. Nobody bought the tickets. He had to scrap the show. Unprecedented. So what we had is the first ever widespread criticism of a Calypso then. And let me rock back a little bit to show you what is the background of this. Don't worry, Anil. This goes back way down to 1956 when Dr. Williams won the election with a very small minority, 13 to 11, I think it is, right? And he immediately assumed that he had won political power for life for Black people. Right? That's what he assumed. Secondly, he immediately, seeing some opposition from the DLP, or the DLP then, he declared Indians was the enemy. Indians are the enemy. Hostile and recalcitrant minority, right? We are the enemy. So right away, he killed the chances of any national unity on anything important in Trinidad that holds on to this day. Now, I don't know where Eric Williams got his PhD, maybe from the toilet in Oxford. He didn't understand the first thing about government, that when you win the election, you have to govern for the whole community. The people that you beat, the people who win you, right? So he had no conception of national unity. That's why we haven't had it up to this day, right? And he realized after a little while that, these guys are giving us a bit of trouble. The opposition gave him some trouble. So he decided to rig the election. He was a thief, he was a crook. He rigged the 1961 election. He put in crooked voting machines. He gerrymandered the boundaries, and he threw in, I think, 200,000 illegal aliens from Grenada, wherever else, and gave them voting cards and gave them residence. That is a crime. He should have been arrested and thrown in jail for that. But he was the prime minister. Nobody can do anything to him. And so, no national unity, PNM in power forever. And he got 30 years. The next thing is another gross mistake made by the Calypsonians. The entire Calypso body of all the Calypsonians, who were all African at the time, they all declared for the PNM, right? We are PNM, we're going to support the PNM, right? And you know what happened with the national song? How could PNM become a national, Calypso become a national song when the Calypsonians are all taking a political side? And in politics, as you know, the enemy, the friend of my enemy is my enemy. So the Calypsonians declare that they were PNM. Indians realize, well, if the PNM guys are our enemy, well, the Calypso guys are our enemy too. There goes any chance of Calypso becoming a national song. I think the same thing happened to Steel Band. I wouldn't go into that. It's the same nonsense. And the Calypsonians became the attack dog on the Indians and on the Indian political party. Not as Anil says, after 1986, they became the attack dogs from 1956. Furthermore, the Calypsonians stopped criticizing the government in power. In the colonial days, they would criticize the colonial administration. As soon as Eric Williams came up, all the Calypsonians say, oh, can't criticize him. He's exempt from prosecution. He's the third smartest man in the world, right? So a function of the Calypso, which was important before, went out the window. And the last one I want to point out is that Calypso became exempt from criticism. Stupid people say those Calypsonians are the poets of the people. They like Shakespeare. Crow is like Shakespeare, right? You can't criticize them. They could sing anything they want. They're free from libel and slander. They could insult and abuse anybody they want. And since they were not abusing the PNM and the Black people in power, well, then that's okay. So here we have Indians as the enemy of the PNM, Indians as the enemy of the Calypso guys, Indians the enemy of the Steel Band, right? And Indians, you have a free reign on them. You could do what you want with them. So we put the hammer, we drop the hammer on Kokro, right? And you know what is the result? the Africans in Trinidad rose like one, like a tidal wave, to defend this man and this piece of crap. Nobody in my recollection said that he was wrong. He should have said that. They all went for him, all of them. And it went so bad that the television people said, you know, we should have a debate on this Calypso common entrance. So I said, yeah, okay, that's good. TTT man invite me as the moderator of the Committee Against Racism in Calypso. Come and discuss the Calypso. Coco will be there, you know. I said, that's good. I'm ready. I will kick his butt. When I say that, the television guy get frightened. When I reached there for the great TV debate, he says, sorry, Coco can't come today, right? So we can't debate, corruption in common entrance while Coco is not there. So I said, well, why you bring me here? You're wasting my time. He said, well, Coco will come at a further TV debate. The next week, Rajni Ramlakar, my other moderator for the committee, she went, they had a TV thing. Coco was supposed to come there too. The coward, he ran and hid under the bed. He never appeared on TV to defend his Calypso. So what happened is that Rajni and I became public enemy number one in Trinidad. Public enemy, right? After that thing, I observed that walking down Frederick Street, you know, I on a couple of occasions I see Black people looking at me, look at her. And I realized if I didn't get out of there fast, there would be fights. And the police would have locked me up because I wasn't a black belt then, I was a purple belt in karate. I beat them up, but the police would lock me up. I know Trinidad. Where I was working in the Guardian, I was a senior reporter writing all the editorials. The impact on the Guardian was such. When I walked through the newsroom, the Indians would cringe. They would cringe. They would fall aside. They can't look me in the face. Black people, the African people, would be glaring at me. And you know something? I realized that I had no future in Trinidad again, right? The weekly newspapers would put me and Rajni every week. We became public enemy number one. We are the big racists, right? I realized that I had no more future in Trinidad. The Guardian was about to fire me, right? And my wife was getting some funny calls in the school and so on, and she could see something going on. My son, who was in St. Mary's, who was taught by that other racist school, short pants, he noticed he was getting some of that too. And by the way, the St. Mary's authorities told me, one of my friends said, this guy short pants, we can't see him from January to March. He's not coming to school. He abandoned the job. He's in Calypso tents every day, but they're afraid to fire him. They told me, if you get one complaint against short pants, they will fire him, throw him on the road. So I said, okay, I'm a parent, I will complain. Rajni said, no, don't do that. Don't make the man lose his job. She was an officer and tutor. And I spared short pants. I don't know where he is now. So this is not the end of the story. Coming close to the end of my presentation, right? Wait, what is going on? Yeah, I think somebody mentioned that. And I left Trinidad. I got my Canadian visa, and I left Trinidad in 1989. So my knowledge of things after that is kind of sketchy. But what I know is that Rajni remained in Trinidad, and she started writing in the Express and other places, asking Indians the same thing. Why are you going there in that tent from black man to insult you and abuse you? And after a couple of years, I think in the early 90s, Indians got the message. They stopped going to the tents, right? They stopped sponsoring, right? And they discovered a strange thing. Indians were the economic backers, the financial backers of the Calypso tents, which was abusing them all the time. When you talk about Nimakaram, you can't go worse than that. And the tents all crashed. They all became bankrupt, or they're bankrupt to this day. And the Calypso nurseries, which was bringing up the young Calypso, Calypsonian and so on, it died. I think the, my other speaker said that Calypso is dead, right? And who killed it? Crow. Rajni too. Rajni and Crow killed Calypso. She from one side, him from the other side. The fool, he killed the thing he loved, right? He and his fellow Calypsonians, they killed Calypso, and Calypso is going nowhere now. But the situation remains. There's division in the country. There's no national unity on anything political or anything economic, right? On the cultural matters, the same thing is that the Africans are trying to impose their culture on us Indians, and we ain't taking it. Now, what is the repercussions for all of this? I'm going to finish now, right? When you don't have political unity, you know what happens. When you don't have economic unity, you know what happens. When you don't have cultural unity, the country is not going anywhere. And I have seen it here in Canada, where we have political unity, economic unity, and cultural unity. You who have lived in Trinidad your whole life, you can't understand what it is like, right? To be in a country where you have, well, what you have never had in Trinidad, right? And I tell people plain, when I was in Trinidad, I'm not standing up for the national anthem. Let the black people stand up for it. I'm not saluting no flag. Larry Williams, for that. He was not my prime minister. He was never my prime minister. He was them people prime minister. And let them put that in their pipe and smoke it. But here in Canada, Mr. Trudeau is my prime minister. Now, I didn't vote for him in the last election. I might vote for him in another election, but he is my prime minister. He's the prime minister of the whole country. The economic policies of every successive liberal, conservative, whatever government is for the whole country. Trinidad doesn't know that. They cannot know that, right? And you ask me, well, what is my culture, right? I tell you plain, Calypso from Trinidad is not mine. Calypso from Toronto, that is not mine. That's somebody else's culture. What is my Canadian culture? I'm a Canadian citizen now. Brother, we have Celine Dion. We have Shania Twain. We have Bryan Adams. We have Justin Bieber. Those are people. And we have 90,000 Indo-Caribbean, Indo-Trinidadians here in Toronto, and about 200,000 Indo-Trinidadians in the United States. Over 300,000 who have given Trinidad the bye-bye. We can't live there again. We don't want to be there as the enemy of the government, right? As the people who are being bitten by the attack dogs, right? A place where we have no future. So I will stop there. I think my time is up. It only gave me 12 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Jalsa. A very bold and enlightening presentation. I'll leave my comments until after. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question, I'll invite you to please raise your electronic hand in preparation for the Q&A session, which will begin after our next presenter has spoken. You will find the electronic hand in the reactions button at the base of your computer screen. So please go ahead and begin to raise your hand so that we'll call upon you as quickly as you can. Thank you so much. So our final speaker is no stranger to this platform. Charlene Maharaj was a former chairperson and coordinator for this program. She's a former airline, aviation, tourism, and marketing industry expert. She's now principal of a consumer research company that helps businesses identify new consumer opportunities. Welcome, Charlene. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Shalima. Namaste. Salam alaikum. Good evening, everyone. I would like to start off by congratulating the Indo-Caribbean platform for taking up this very, very sensitive topic. And it is something that I think is a discussion we need to have. It's an expression that needs to be placed out there publicly. And why is that? What is happening now globally is that we are at this important junction in our history, not just in Trinidad, but we are seeing the rise of minority groups worldwide. We are seeing people speaking out, the Black and non-white population speaking out in Hollywood and demanding their space. We are seeing persons in football clubs and football clubs being penalized for racist rants by their fans. We notice and we recognize, Mr. Jagasa, the apologies by Prime Minister Trudeau to the Aboriginal population. And we also recognize the Black Lives Movement, where it spoke to institutional racism in the police service in New York and elsewhere. And that is the context within which I would like to deliver my presentation this evening, recognizing the powerful presentations that preceded me. I may be repeating some of it, and because all of it very relevant, all intermingling with each other, and I guess ending off where I am now going to deliver. So allow me to share my presentation now. And I'm starting off with, hold on a sec. I'm starting off with a headline by Professor Selwyn Cudjoe, who today defended what he called the noble art of Calypso. But I want to ask and point out, especially based on the previous presenters, I want to highlight that there's a darker side to Calypso. And by dark, I don't mean anything racist. I literally mean the Star Wars connotation that you've gone to the dark side. There is an element that we need to pay attention to. And in spite of its nobility and its beauty, and even some of its lyrics and the musicality of it, because I'm telling you, if I were to mute the lyrics of Crow Crow and listen to how it's delivered, there's a beauty in the way it is done. And we cannot deny that. But neither can we deny, as Anil puts it, the weaponization of an art form. But do we condemn that? This is Selwyn Cudjoe today. Do we condemn the craft? And I would like to continue from that realm. I want to put again the question of racism in Calypso as one that has become institutionalized and one that is systemic in our country. And to frame that, one definition of institutionalized racism is put here. It is the generalized discrimination against a racial group that has been incorporated into a public and a social system. And whilst racism in itself is unhealthy for nationhood and the progress of any society, institutionalized and systemic racism or structural racism is very dangerous, because what it does is that it assigns systems and resources to racism that the average person who bears the hurt, the brunt, the pain, and the follow-on effects of such bigotry does not have to address it. Institutionalized racism becomes a culture shock to one's being, breaking down trust in our society. And when it comes to Calypsos in particular, we are talking about a particular type of racism that is expressed in words linguistically. And what some may call discursive racism. It is not confined only to racial slurs or hate speech. There are also coded words that have racial meaning embedded in them. And we saw some of that with Crow Crow, and we saw some of that which Choki, I think, using Indian names to represent and to communicate certain racist images throughout their discourse. And that is the context within which I would like to present, to say, let us frame that darker side of Calypso. I am going to repeat a little bit of what Anil spoke to, and I guess a few of our other presenters. Here we have the names that we're talking about, that discursive racism. And on the opposite side, we are looking at achievements. So from an institutional standpoint, we have the Calypso art form attacking that area of education, education being the platform upon which the Indo population progressed. Here's another tab, but sorry, my apologies. And how did the society address that? This is what the society did. Sorry. The society placed that Calypso, called corruption and common entrance, as Crow questioning Afro-Trinidadians' failure in education. And this is what was spelled out by the Newsday in an 11th of February 2021 article. And I want to go back up. The attack and the use of racist names to align it with corruption and common entrance for the Indo population was repackaged as Crow questioning Afro-Trinidadians' failure in education. That is a symptom of institutionalized racism, how the society takes on that presentation and reframes it and relabels it as something that the society can absorb, and therefore glosses over the hurt and the impact that came to that sector of the population. Again, I'm going to look at something I think Anil spoke to. Black man, they look for that. Mighty Marsh Days done and Ricky Jai start. Another discursive racist use of a singular name to represent all of Indian culture. And attacking the music of that culture. Music, as we know in Indian culture, is so very important. It is what came with our ancestors into the Caribbean region during indentureship. It is what helped us survive. It is forms a critical part of our prayers, of our weddings, etc. Arthur Ollie look for that. But what is rather unique here is that whilst Crow is mashing up Ricky Jai and being discursively racist in my view, Ricky Jai himself was taken on a Caribbean slang and came out with Holy Lata Mangeshkar, feeding in to the same idea that Crow himself was pushing. I am not arguing for or against what Ricky Jai did here. What I am saying is how disingenuous of Crow to speak about Ricky Jai when he was actually saying the same thing that Crow is saying in that Mighty Marsh Days done and Ricky Jai start. But Ricky Jai was saying to Holy Lata Mangeshkar. So you're basically saying to Ricky Jai, stop singing to Holy Lata Mangeshkar. Moreover, look at this album that Ricky Jai brought out, Reggae Moods. There's nothing Indian about that. So why, again, just trying to reflect something that is not there and the level of, it's disingenuous that went into it. Let's move on. And again, the irony of it. We look at racial integration, another Crow piece. Shah Mohammed pushing racialism because he said it was time for us to have an Indian prime minister. And that is the area where we're asking for, or Shah Mohammed was asking for, minority representation and access to the powers and the offices of power. I don't have the year that was done, but let's look at today. Today, what is happening today? We have Reginald Dumas speaking out on the President Kangaloo's nomination and said, I would have preferred a Hindu president. What is the difference between what Reginald Dumas said and the same question that Shah Mohammed raised? It's time for an Indian prime minister. He is saying it's time for a Hindu president. I have not heard any Calypsonian coming out and condemning Reginald Dumas as being racist. Moreover, internationally, and we have had this resonance also in Trinidad, when Kamala Harris became the first Black vice president, and I guess Asian Black president, women and Black women here celebrated. It's again, we're talking about that minority representation. When Meghan Markle joined the royals, women, Black women, and people celebrated here because they saw the breakdown of certain barriers. But unfortunately, and when Obama became president, it was the same thing. So access to positions of power is now so part of our narrative globally, where people are appointed based on minority representation. And here we have Crow condemning Shah Mohammed in that time because he had requested that. I will move on from here. I wouldn't. So is there a darker side? I would say there's a darker side to the Calypso that we do not want to pay attention to as a society. Is it institutionally supported? And is it therefore delivering institutional and systemic racism? And I would say yes. And let me show you why. Some of it mentioned in between, but I want to bring it out in my presentation. This was an article with the headline, Tents Waiting on Government, Friday the 4th of January, 2019. And it is important that we look at the wording of this. Tents get allocation from whom? From government and corporate sponsors. We are talking about privately run Calypso tents that have applied for government allocation. And this has been traditionally done. So what that says to me is that over the years, there have been financial support or has been financial support for all these tents that have been delivering racist lyrics and creating division and providing a narrative for the rest of society, including the political society, to attack certain groups of people, namely the Indo-Trinidadians. Let's move on. We have honored and we have crowned on a national level those persons who have delivered these calypsos. And here we have some of them starring. But we have not only done that on a one-day basis, we have publicized and archived in our own media and national institutions, including places like NALIS, to continue to put in the public space these winnings and these great achievements of attacking us as a person, or attacking certain sectors of our society. That is institutionalized in the racism. My question is, therefore, where do we go from here? People are beginning to speak out, and we are being encouraged and supported by the international space that I spoke about, and the change in the dynamics that's taken place on a global phase. And we are not afraid. However, when you speak out, you still are framed in a society where Calypso racism remains the mainstream narrative. And as a result, the outcome of it is that those who dare speak out are gaslighted. And there are many different, and there are many methods of gaslighting those who speak out. Here we have, and I put this up specifically, there was a chat group on which we were talking about institutionalized racism and Calypso. Someone came very dismissive of what was being discussed to create a diversion and says, this piece, look, she picked up this piece from somewhere. Eric Williams' great-grandchildren from City Mall, and there was a fight that broke off there, right? And this was being posted up, taken off of social media and say, well, look at this as racism and disrespect for our first leader. So removing and trying to deflect from the discussion is part of gaslighting, not allowing an understanding of the space of what the institutions are doing to cement and concretize the divide. Let us throw in their faces their areas of racism. But the question is not racism. Racism will exist. It has existed. Yes, it's unhealthy. Yes, we condemn it. The question is, how do we attend to institutionalized and systemic racism? Another way that you do it, and today I noticed that even Professor Cujo did it in his article. You take a list of Indians that have entered the Calypso world and say, well, if there's racism, then why are they there? So creating a false equivalence is also a method of gaslighting. We have to look and ask ourselves, well, there are black actors who have achieved certain awards in an Oscar awards, Grammy awards. Does that mean to say that there is not institutionalized racism in some of these awards? We have to place it in context. Or because a black guy attains certain ranks in the police service in New York, and there are a certain number of blacks in the police service in New York, does it negate the existence of institutionalized racism? No, it doesn't. So we need to stand up against false equivalence that is being pushed through our society. And there we have another one where people are questioning the existence of certain powerful Indian persons. And a lot of us would have seen this post where a UE lecturer, given her position, asking why should Anil Beam be given an award. Basically, he is no Stalin, that is what she is saying. So, and they do this in the context of the talk of unity. Why are you raising racist issue? Why are you raising racist issue? You become the racist in that argument. So they dangle these talks of unity whilst dismissing the deeper hurt, the pain, the racist ranks that creates the division. And I think Mr. Jagasa or Ram spoke to that as well. So the question is, coming back to the start of this section, where do we go from here? We have to create a sense of nationhood, and that will only come when we honestly address the hurt and pain. And that starts by recognizing that Calypso may not be or is not all good. And there are ways that we can do it. One, establish a review committee that comprise, again, let me step back, Sharma. These are just my ideas. They're things that could be, I don't know. Some people may be able to guide me and say if I'm being too idealistic at this point. Establish a review committee comprised of persons who have deep-seated hurt, chaired by a truly independent person, probably somebody who comes from Canada or somewhere outside, or even somebody of Chairman Lynch, who chaired the Commission of Inquiry for the Parria, of that nature that people can trust, to address and review all Calypsos since independence for racist content and microaggression. This report should be published and not be treated as the Darrell Smith report that was taken away and hidden. Corporate sponsors should be named who supported those Calypso 10s. Because today we talk about environmental, social, and governance ratings, and these determine investments in the country and in large businesses. If we find that some of our businesses have been supporting racist 10s and institutions, they need to be called out. Two, we must look at, for moving forward, develop a watch group, a watchdog group somewhat, comprised.
Charles, excuse me 1 second. Yeah, I would love for you to go through all, but it's already 5 p.m. and we haven't even done Q&A as yet.
All right, so I just want the last one. Last but not least, all those who have actively or silently supported such racism in what has been termed the noble and creative art of Calypso must, like the Canadians did, issue an apology to those who have been hurt over the years. And thank you, Charlemagne. Thanks everyone for listening. And I hope I have brought some sort of conclusion to all the discussion that took place.
No, excellent presentation, very revealing. And a few comments in the chat, you will notice Dr. Shah, Sita Shah would have said very objective, and many people agree with you. Yes, very, very objective. At this point in time, I want to say to all of our presenters, excellent presentations today. And we're just going to be very brief with our Q&A. Obviously, it's already 5 p.m. and we should be closing the program now, but you all had so much to share. We just couldn't stop you. So thank you all so much for preparing and for sharing. So let's take our first question from Dr. Ashford Maraj. You've been very patient. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. This is excellent work done by your panelists and indeed your Indo-Caribbean Center. Anil would have, the senator would have read some of the comments I made or questions I have. I don't know if we have time to answer them, but before he does, I want to make some quick comments because I see how the drift that is taking place here. We got to be careful because these are songs and don't take them so serious, really. I understand what you all are saying. The undertone could be dangerous, yes. But these are art form and we must respect them for what they are. Secondly is the last presenter, Charlene mentioned about institutional racism. That's a model. That's a model by the present government. That is how they win power. So it is asking them to deviate from a model that keeps them in power. So if you ask them to go to the Big Tent, they wouldn't. They don't like the unity between Indo and Africans and everything else. So we must not help them by trying to divide even further. We're already divided as we are. So it is better we try and approach this from a level and sober-headed. And I'm sure that Senator Arnold Roberts would give us feedback on this. But this unity and diversity is what we should be looking for rather than trying to pull on one and understand what it is. This is a business, and I think Arnold will have that first question I asked him about this being a business and to look at the business side of it. Finally, I would like to end, I know our time is very, very short, to mention that to Arnold, if I look at him in this picture now, he's getting more and more Indo than Afro. He's looking more like he's getting older and he's looking more Indo. So take it away. Thank you very much, all of you. I want to end because I see our time is over.
Thank you. Senator Roberts, please. Would you like him to repeat any specific question to you? You'll have to unmute.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Could you rapid fire call the question? Answer.
Dr. Maraj?
Yes, I was. The first question I had for you was, like other industries, it is a value-driven product that is capitalized on the aggressive entrepreneur visionary to achieve financial success. This is the result of applying a product for which there is a demand for creating demand for the unique product. This is the case I'm making for Krokro, that there's a market for him and he's delved into the market. So why would you blame the guy? Secondly,
okay, 1 second.
Wait, let me deal with that one first. There is no market for him. That's why they don't make any money. Nobody buys anything. He's not marketable. He gets no endorsements. He makes no money. No one buys his music. No one downloads his music. His benefit is that PNM wins and he gets a CPEP job, or he gets us HDC house, or he gets benefits from the PNM. The tents don't make money. They don't make money. It's not viable. It's a total disaster that is just supported by the government and the government only.
Right. My second question then is, he's a guy from the Deep South. I mean, I'm using his name, but he could be anybody else. He's from the Deep South, way down in the Deep South. And where did he develop this model of kind of behind the bridge mentality? I mean, he has to, I mean, something had to trigger it. Do you know or you don't know?
Well, I do know now. You would know about short man syndrome and so on. He's a man that when you analyze his upbringing and his experiences, and he's very short, they try to call him the mighty midget. But when you see him and you interact with him, and I have had the displeasure of interacting with him for a number of years, he is a man with a number of chips. He needs a psychological analysis to determine where it came from and where it came from. But normally people from the South are more inclined to be unified. The village life, the country life, the agricultural sector, the oil, even the oil fields. African and Indians unite in the South more than in the North. So he is an enigma in that manner, but it is his personal upbringing, his personal shortcomings, his lack of confidence in himself that manifests itself in his torturous, painful calypsos.
And the last one I had for you, which I wrote, finally, could you also address the fact that if one is seeking to split the Indo-African alliance, he or she is doing the dirty work of the so-called Anglo-Franco-Syrian Creole model of divide and rule?
Absolutely, and one must understand that the PNM is not an African party. They sell themselves at that to ride the backs of Afro-Trinidadians, and all the largest goes to those in the business community. The Syrians, I don't like to group people, but I'm answering quickly, and the big businesses and the big contractors. So it is absolutely correct that he is used to keep the mind share, as Dr. Williams injected initially, that the PNM is a black man's party. Now, when you analyze on every tenet human development index across the decades of PNM policy, you will see that PNM is worse for black people than any amalgam or the UNC or any amalgamation thereof of a unified government.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. Dr. Maraj, we need to move on. Thank you so much for your questions and Senator Roberts for your responses. Dr. Indira Rampasad, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Alima. So I want to venture a response as to why these calypsos are pervading our environment. And I just want to read for you my response to Chalky's song on arithmetic some years ago, which I responded to in the newspaper. And this is what I said. Chalky's major miscalculation came with the title of my commentary was Chalky's miscalculation. So this is what I said. His major miscalculation came with his actual commentary on child marriage of Hindu girls in Trinidad and Tobago. Clearly, the theme of his calypso needed a target, and the outspoken Satmaraj presented a ready one, as he has traditionally faced the brunt of caustic attacks from the Calypsonians. But statistics presented by the Attorney General indicate that child marriage is not just a Hindu phenomenon, and Satmaraj is certainly not its only advocate. It is actually practiced by Hindu, Muslim, Christian, and Orissa religions. Moreover, the very idea of child marriage is somewhat misleading, as it suggests that the very young girls are being forced into marriage. However, what actually obtains in Trinidad and Tobago is teen marriage, usually with the consent of the parents and or the teens themselves. The law practiced by these many cultural groups are steeped in religious and moral values. They aim to ensure that the family and its concomitant mores and ethics are protected. It was particularly endorsed by the religious leaders to ensure that males of whatever age would assume responsibilities if they impregnated these young girls, thereby giving them a level of dignity, support, and stability. Hence the reason why the amendments to the miscellaneous provisions Marriage Bill 2016 were not supported by some politicians. The biggest miscalculation in Chalky's ditty, however, is that it grossly distorts what actually prevails with regard to young Hindu girls. They are hardly being forced to marry 75-year-old men in Satmaraj's garage at age 14. Chalky's commentary has not been fair to the numerous Hindu girls who are now vigorously pursuing tertiary education and earning master's and doctoral degrees, as any good survey would reveal. It also sent erroneous messages to the international community about the progress of young women in Trinidad and Tobago. Thus, Chalky may... Yes, I'm going to wrap up and just tell you why. Chalky may consider recalculating the arithmetic next year by paying tribute to the numerous achievements of these young women. Okay, so I had also responded to Professor Ryan, who wrote a book on the Jundi and the cross, and my response was Ryan crucified the Jundi. But Ryan cited my attack on Prowler. And what basically came out of that attack was a tongue-in-cheek response that Prowler was really expressing the insecurity of the Afro community by the upsurge of Hindu nationalism and Indian nationalism in the national arena, because at that time, the Pandey government had come into power. And this is my explanation, that all of this, I think, all of these responses, all of these lyrics, calypsos, whatnot, and Chalky had responded to me saying that it's the art form, but that's not good enough. You see, freedom of expression is not freedom to mash up the place. That is not good enough that it is just an art form, because you're sending powerful messages. To me, it is an expression of insecurity. It is an expression of insecurity in a society in which there is a competition for political space more than social and cultural space, but a political space, and the threat of the rise of Indian nationalism in the diaspora. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we also have to take into consideration when these Calypsonians say what they have to say, they have a large audience, they can change mindsets. They've been able to do so. This, irrespective of ethnicity, they've been able to do so because people hear them, they listen to them. What do we do about that? Let's take a question now from David Subran.
Yes, having heard Dr. Ashford Maharaj, I would like to find out from this learned group whether it is okay and legal for someone to exploit a given cultural art form to denigrate, to defame, or to tell outright lies that can destroy the character of another person. Thank you.
Senator Roberts, would you like to take that?
Well, it's not illegal other than if you want to sue them. And I'm not sure about the case law with Calypsonians being sued, even though Crow is going to be sued right now by Inch and Ishmael. However, the art form used to be quite creative as an art form with double entendre and using lyrics in a way that you could not pin down any evidence to go into a court that could be deemed worthy of defamation. But with the advent of Crow and the likes, who are not that intelligent, who are not that creative, they come out blatantly with plain lyrics and they can be sued. Now, I'm hearing from you that we need to move into the 21st century and bring some laws against defamation and racial whistleblowing and so on. So I take note of your concerns.
Great, thank you. Dr. Rampasad, from a legal standpoint, can you please comment? Please unmute.
Yeah, I think I'm now on mute. I was just typing on the chat because I wanted other people to get the opportunity to speak. So Senator Roberts, you're right. So someone has to bring the matter to court, some individual or some group, and they have to prove and show that they have been adversely affected, that these Calypsonians are working to their detriment, and they have to prove that, how they're personally affected. It might be a very, very difficult thing to do. But yes, the law would allow a case to be brought on defamation and even libel if it is published. Thanks.
So Inch and Ishmael does indeed have possibly something to go with in this recent case against Crow, maybe?
Definitely. I've read the song, read the lyrics, and he erred because he made specific statements of fact which are false. So he didn't do it in a way like singing about a bygone or onion or something that makes you think and wonder and could have many interpretations. He called Inch and Ishmael a racist because he says that Inch and Ishmael attacked Kareem Marcel, the young PNM junior member, who was allowed to go into UE Law School, even though he had 2s and 3s. So on that basis, I can see enough fact, and I'm not a lawyer, I just grew up around lawyers, a bush lawyer, but that statement, Crow will have to prove that Inshan saw this young man, and the man was very bright, which would mean that he had 1s and A's and lots of a very high track record in academia, and therefore Inshan Ishmael's analysis of him not being worthy would have been based on race. But the point is that the evidence shows that the boy did not qualify to enter law school. Also, he made a categorical statement that there are stolen parts. Inshan Ishmael sells stolen parts in the bamboo. To my knowledge, I've never seen or heard of any allegation of Inshan Ishmael selling stolen parts. So in my unofficial, unqualified legal position, Crow will have some money to pay.
Can I throw in a piece?
Sure. Go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
This is not a legal matter, right? When I was in the Guardian, I got a legal opinion that Crow's Calypso was a $500 legal opinion. Crow's Calypso was libelous. You think the Guardian would have dared to sue him? No. I got a guy named Krishna Maharaj, whose name was called in the Calypso. I mean, I think I mentioned that. I told him, why don't you sue Crow? Right? Put him in court. He said, go kill me this time. So that all this legality means nothing when the government and the government supporters are quietly and sometimes openly supporting it. And I saw the reaction myself. I spoke my mind about this Calypso and so on, and people wanted to kill me. Right? People wanted to kill me for that. So all this legal talk is a bunch of rubbish. If there is not a community, and especially government and the government in power, if they don't want it, it ain't going to happen.
Okay, Mr. Jagasa, always
I
very
will beg to differ there. While I agree that people like myself and politicians, we accept and close our ears to nonsense, because the judicial system is quite frustrating. You have to really be motivated to plan to waste 6 years of your life, 50 appearances in court, lots of money to go the distance. But I see that this man, Inshan Ishmael, is and has all the words and motivation and passion to follow through. And it will be quite a strong message when Crow loses, because he will be forced to pay some sort of penalty.
All right, thank you. We've gone over by 17 minutes, but we will take our final question from Dr. Harold Ramdas. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, just a really quick comment. The racism didn't start with Crow. It is much older than that. Cut the capra, right? For as long as there's been Calypso in English, there's been sort of a very strong anti-Indian bias. It's not just been against Indians. Anyone would remember in 1986, Denise Plummer got pelted with toilet paper and rotten fruit on stage. The thing about this taking a legal turn, censorship makes me really uncomfortable when it comes to art. I think we need to find social ways to push back against this, to articulate like who we are and what's tolerable. And I think the other side of this whole debate is we need increased funding for Indian culture as national culture. Indian culture is seriously underfunded. So to get to what Charlene was talking about in her really brilliant presentation, that becomes the narrative, that becomes the national narrative, and then there's only one voice and it becomes anti-Indian. So I hope we could have a program on sort of obtaining state funding, which is really our taxpayer dollars, for Indian culture as national culture. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that contribution. Mr. Kanhai, do you have a question? Please, if you have a question, we'll allow it, but not a comment so that we can add. You need to unmute very quickly, please. Okay, I'm not hearing from him. So at this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, I think it would be, it would be safe to bring it to a close, Charles. Just hold it, please. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you very much to all of you for joining us today. Thank you so much to our esteemed presenters, Senator Anil Roberts, Mr. Ram Jagasa, Professor Johnny Kuman Singh, Charlene Maharaj. Thank you very, very much. Excellent discussion today. Ladies and gentlemen, I will close now and turn you over to our chair, Shakira Mohammed. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Shalma. I will be brief also, and thank you to everyone who participated. And thank you especially to the speakers and to this, as we've said before, this public meeting is being hosted by the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center, and you can contact Dr. Kumar Mahabir for further details, giving your suggestions as well as your donations. We'd like to thank the planning team and the IT manager behind the scenes, Robin Ramsing, who has been recording the program and will edit and upload it to our website and to YouTube permanently for posterity. So our topic next Sunday will be Valentine love songs in the Indian diaspora. How do we choose from that? Please visit our channel on YouTube to see all our past recordings. I am Shakira Mohammed of Trinidad and Tobago saying goodbye. May God bless you all. Dhanyavad.